Hi, I'm Anne. For the longest time, I thought family meant home, love, security. I thought I was part of something that would always have my back, no matter what. But on my 30th birthday, my parents handed me a suitcase, packed with everything I had, without a single word of thanks. No, I love you, no goodbye, just a cold, unfeeling command. You're too old to freeload. I was the one who paid the bills. I covered the debts, I kept the lights on. I did everything to keep the house running smoothly. And still, somehow, I wasn't enough. But here's the thing. The worst part wasn't being kicked out. It was the moment I realized I had been used. For years. And I never even saw it coming. The second I finally stood up for myself, they tried to tear me down. Before we dive in, though, I'm curious. What time is it where you are and what's your story? Drop a comment below because I want to hear from you. Sometimes we don't just survive storms, we outgrow them. It was getting dark when I pulled up into that cracked driveway, the sun already sinking behind the trees, leaving the small town of Ridgway, Ohio, blanketed in a heavy blue dusk. There's that crispness in the air when fall first starts to settle in, just a chill that sneaks under your jacket collar and makes you want to fold into yourself. I reached across the passenger seat, grabbed the small cake box I'd bought myself, a cheap $20 a birthday treat, and stared at it for a moment. Vanilla frosting, some cheap red icing that said, "Happy Birthday" in crooked, rushed handwriting. I didn't bother correcting the tired teenager who made it. It was a small gesture for myself on a day that didn't feel like it was mine. Walking inside, something was off. Now, I didn't expect a party or even a card. My parents had given up on celebrating anything a long time ago. But there was a silence in the air that felt different tonight. It was heavier, thicker, more sterile than usual. The kitchen lights hummed above, casting everything in a pale, unforgiving glow. Dinner was already set on the table. Meatloaf, canned green beans, and instant mashed potatoes. I hadn't even taken my coat off when Cullen, my father, barked from his seat at the head of the table. "You're late." I set the cake down carefully, the bag crinkling louder than I'd intended. "Worked late. Had to finish up some reports," I said flatly. No apology, no excuse. Just the truth. Vera, my mum, didn't look up. She just fiddled with her fork, her head down. Cullen poured himself another generous shot of whiskey, his chipped glass catching the light in a way that made everything feel even colder. I hung my coat up, sat down, and tried to ignore the tension that seemed to spiderweb across the room. The clinking of silverware, the scrape of knives against plates, the occasional forced cough. No happy birthday from anyone. No warm acknowledgement, just the mechanical rhythm of eating. I pushed my fork around my plate, poking at the sad clump of potatoes. I should have known something was coming. Cullen wasn't the type to simmer quietly for long. About halfway through the meal, he slammed his fork down hard enough to make Vera jump. The sound shot up my spine, a sudden sharp crack. He leaned back in his chair, glaring at me like he was seeing something rotten. "You're too old to be freeloading." His voice was cold, rehearsed. "It's time you left." For a second, those words just hung in the air. Unreal. I blinked at him, then glanced at Vera, hoping for some kind of sign, some contradiction, some look that would tell me this was just a drunken rant. But she kept her head down, her lips pressed so tightly together they looked bloodless. "I pay the internet bill," I said carefully. "The electricity, half the mortgage, the groceries." My voice didn't crack, didn't rise. Just facts. I was done pretending. Cullen let out a laugh, short and sharp like a slap to the face. "Paying a few bills doesn't buy you a lifetime stay, princess." Princess. That used to be his nickname for me when I was little, climbing onto his lap with scraped knees, begging for attention. Now it felt like a slap. I swallowed down whatever part of me cracked at that moment. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been planned. They waited for my birthday, of all days, to throw me out. My birthday wasn't a celebration, it was a deadline. I pushed my plate away. The meatloaf, the cake, the weight in the room, it all sat in my stomach like a brick. Standing up slowly, I could feel their eyes follow me, expecting a scene. Tears, begging, some pathetic display of weakness to justify their cruelty. Instead, I nodded, just once, sharp, final. Got it, I said. Cullen smirked like he had won some invisible victory. Vera didn't look up, just kept her head down, shame pooling on her shoulders, but not enough to make her speak, not enough to stop me from being disposable. I grabbed the cake and carried it upstairs, not looking back. Every step felt like a small betrayal, each creak in the floorboards louder than the last. I closed my bedroom door behind me, leaned against it, and let the hollow thud echo in my chest. This house wasn't mine. Maybe it never had been. I sat down on the bed, the weight of the cake in my hand suddenly feeling too heavy. The room around me felt cold. I had been packing for weeks, quietly, slowly, but I'd been too afraid to finish it. I always thought I had time. I thought I could fix things if I just kept helping, kept giving. But tonight, I realized I was done. I peeled off my jacket, folding it neatly over the suitcase as my hands moved mechanically. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I was tired. I was so tired of pretending I could fix something that had never been mine to fix. As I went through the motions of packing, my mind began to click through the logistics. Cancel autopay for the utilities. Cancel the cable, the internet. Move my money into my own account, not the joint one my mother had insisted I keep for emergencies. Find a storage unit until I figured out what came next. They didn't just kick me out. They wiped out everything I'd ever done for them, without so much as a thank you, without asking for anything in return. I realized then, in that moment, that I had given them everything. And now, it was time for me to take it back. The wind outside picked up, rattling the leaves off the maples that lined the street. It was a reminder that winter was coming, and I wouldn't be here when it hit. Not in this house, not in this life. I zipped up my suitcase, and as I looked in the mirror, I saw myself. Same brown hair pulled into a loose bun, same tired green eyes. But something was different. A line had been crossed. A line I couldn't uncross even if I wanted to. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the cake on my nightstand. It looked so small there, so out of place. I hadn't even bought candles. Not that it mattered. No one would have been here to sing anyway. The smell of cheap frosting was suffocating, making my stomach turn. I stared at it for a long moment, then, without thinking, I pushed the box off the nightstand. It fell with a soft thud, the cake and cardboard crumbling against the worn carpet. Happy birthday, Anne. I didn't feel the need to cry or scream or even yell at the injustice of it all. The silence in the room pressed against me like a second skin, and I realized for the first time it wasn't just the silence of an empty house. It was the silence of a life I had given everything to, only to be discarded. I moved through the motions of finishing the packing, folding the last of my clothes, gathering a few essentials. But in my mind, I kept thinking about all the things they'd never understand. The times I stayed late at work, sacrificing my own time to cover bills they couldn't manage. The money I sent for repairs, for groceries, for whatever they needed. And yet, all of it had been so easily forgotten. By the time I finished packing my things, I felt like an empty shell. The weight of years of sacrifice, of love that had never been returned, was finally gone. But it wasn't relief. It was something colder, something final. I sat on the edge of the bed again, looking at the empty space around me. This room, this house, none of it had ever felt like home. It had been a place I was tolerated, used until I was no longer needed. My phone buzzed, another message from Vera. "You're making a mistake. Please, just come down, we need to talk." I didn't even open it. I didn't need to hear any more of their pleas, their lies. I had made my decision. I wasn't going back. As I moved toward the door, I took one last look at the house. The lights in the living room were on, and I could hear the muffled sound of the TV, the clinking of glasses. They were fine. They were pretending everything was okay. But I knew better now. I opened the door to my bedroom and stood in the hallway for a moment. The silence felt like a cloak, heavy and suffocating. But it wasn't an absence of noise. It was the absence of care, the absence of love. I stepped down the stairs slowly, quietly, trying to make as little noise as possible. The living room was bathed in the soft, sterile glow of the TV. Cullen was sitting in his recliner, beer in hand. Vera sat on the couch, her eyes glazed over, the same vacant look she always wore when things got tough. I didn't say anything. I just walked past them, out the front door, without a word. The car was parked a few blocks away, hidden in the shadows of the night. I climbed into the driver's seat, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was free. I didn't look back. The road ahead was dark, but it felt like the world had finally opened up to me. I drove in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound, the weight in my chest finally starting to lift. It wasn't a freedom that felt joyful, but more like a sigh of relief after holding your breath for too long. When I pulled up to Nora's apartment, the streets were quiet, the only sound the rustle of leaves in the wind. I parked, then sat in the car for a moment, staring at the dashboard, letting everything sink in. Tomorrow would be a new day, a new chapter. But tonight, I needed to rest. I grabbed my things, opened the car door, and walked up the stairs to Nora's apartment. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. She was already waiting, sitting on the couch, the soft glow of a lamp casting warm light on her face. "How are you?" she asked, her voice calm, steady. I sat down beside her, running a hand through my hair. I don't know, a little numb, maybe. Nora handed me a cup of coffee, the steam rising from it like a comforting hug. "You don't need to figure it all out tonight. Just breathe for a minute." I nodded, taking the coffee, grateful for her quiet presence. It was easy to lose yourself in someone else's drama, but Nora had always been a place of calm for me, a place where I could just be. The next few days were a blur. I filled my time with little tasks, organising the paperwork I'd brought with me, calling the few friends I had left, updating my resume, even taking a walk through the town just to get some air. Every step forward felt like a small victory, but I couldn't escape the lingering weight of everything I'd left behind. But then came the text. It was from Tyler, my cousin. The one person who seemed to always get it, even when I didn't. "Hey," he wrote, "have you seen what your dad posted?" I hesitated for a moment, not wanting to dive back into that toxic mess. But my curiosity got the best of me. I tapped the link he sent me, and there it was. A post on the town's Facebook group, filled with venom and lies. "Some daughters are raised to be grateful," Cullen had written. "Some turn into snakes. After everything we sacrificed, our daughter left us sick, starving, abandoned. Pray for us." The post had already gathered dozens of comments. Some people offered prayers. Others hurled judgment, calling me everything from ungrateful to heartless. The familiar shame began to creep back in, but I fought it. Not this time. I put the phone down and looked up at Nora, who had been watching me silently from across the room. She didn't need to ask. She could see the way the news had hit me. "Are you going to let them do this?" she asked, her voice steady but sharp. I sat for a moment, feeling the weight of the question sink in. "No," I said finally. "Not this time." I stood up, my hands already moving toward the drawer where I kept everything. The receipts, the bank statements, the proof of all the things they had taken from me without even acknowledging it. It wasn't about revenge. It was about showing them that I wasn't just a pawn in their game anymore. I began scanning everything into my laptop, making sure every document was perfectly organised, every date, every amount, everything they had tried to erase. There would be no denying what I had done for them. No more silence. By the time I finished, I felt different. I wasn't angry, but I was done. I was done being their safety net, done being their scapegoat. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story. That night, as I sat at Nora's kitchen table, I uploaded the documents. It wasn't a post filled with rage or emotion. It was clinical. It was the truth, laid bare for anyone to see. The next morning, the phone started buzzing. At first, it was just a few likes and comments from people who had known me. But then the momentum shifted. The shares started. The comments started flooding in. Neighbours, friends, even people I barely recognised began to speak up. Stories about how they had seen me shovel snow alone at 16 while my father yelled from the porch. How they had seen me fix leaks and pay for repairs when no one else would. It was all coming out now. All the things they had taken for granted, all the things they had hidden in their shame, were now on display. And Cullen? He wasn't handling it well. First, he tried to counterattack. He posted a furious status, claiming I was exaggerating for sympathy. "We all have misunderstandings in families," he wrote. "My daughter is just trying to get attention." But no one was buying it anymore. Underneath his post, people began to comment, pointing out how he'd never mentioned me paying the bills, how I'd kept them afloat all these years. It was a slow unravelling. Later, Vera tried to call. Voicemails filled my inbox, each one begging me to take it down. She wanted to fix everything, to make it seem like there had been some mistake. But I knew better now. This wasn't about fixing anything. It was about controlling the narrative, and I wasn't going to let them. By the time the town's gossip started shifting, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I wasn't the villain they had painted me to be. I wasn't the person they had tried to erase. The truth had come out, and the world had started to listen. And for the first time, I didn't need to apologise for choosing myself. A few days later, the calls began again. But this time, I didn't pick up. Instead, I sat on the couch in Nora's apartment, scrolling through the endless notifications on my phone, each one more suffocating than the last. One voicemail after another from Vera trying to plead with me. The texts from Cullen, venomous and angry, accusing me of abandoning my family. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had made my decision. The silence in the room felt different now, almost liberating. There was no more guilt-laced pressure, no more trying to fix a family that had never known what it meant to care. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the weight of their expectations hanging over me. I wasn't responsible for them anymore. I closed my laptop, set it aside, and leaned back on the couch, letting the stillness settle around me. It was an odd feeling, one I wasn't quite used to. Freedom. Real freedom. The kind that came from knowing I had done everything I could, and now it was time to let go. That night, as the sun set, Nora and I went to the small local diner down the street. We didn't talk much, just enjoyed the quiet comfort of the place. It was one of those rare moments where everything felt okay. The weight of the past didn't feel so heavy, the future didn't seem so daunting, and for the first time in a long while, I could breathe. I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. I didn't have to justify my decisions. The next morning, the first hint of fall creeping through the windows, I received another message from Tyler. This one was short, but it hit hard. Cullen filed a civil suit against you. I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. I knew what that meant. The same old game, the same old manipulation. But I had prepared myself for this. I had my evidence, years of receipts, statements, and proof of all the sacrifices I'd made for them. I wasn't going to let them drag me down anymore. I sat down at the kitchen table, the papers from the lawsuit spread out in front of me. It was laughable. Claims of theft, emotional abuse, financial abandonment. But it wasn't about the truth anymore. It was about revenge. I wasn't about to let them win. I called the legal aid office in Columbus, explained the situation, and forwarded them the evidence I'd already gathered. They listened, reassured me, and assured me they would help draft a countersuit if needed. The more I spoke to them, the more I realized I wasn't the one who needed to be defended. It was them. They had crossed the line, not me. The calls continued to come in, but this time I didn't feel the usual twinge of guilt. It was gone. The shame they tried to force on me was no longer mine to carry. I had done everything I could for them, and now it was time for me to take my life back. A few days later, as I sat in Nora's apartment, scrolling through the latest messages from family and friends, I realized how much had changed. My heart didn't feel like it was dragging behind me anymore. The truth had come out. I had finally found my voice. Later that afternoon, Nora and I walked down to the local park. It was quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. As we sat on the bench, I looked around at the people passing by, families, friends, strangers, and realized something. The world hadn't stopped. Life went on. And for the first time, I wasn't clinging to the wreckage of the past. I wasn't trying to fix something that could never be fixed. I had finally chosen myself. The final chapter wasn't easy, but it was necessary for me and for my future. As I moved into my new place, a small, humble apartment I had picked out myself, I felt the weight of everything I'd left behind fall away. The cracked walls of that old house no longer had a hold on me. I painted my new walls, one stroke at a time, choosing colours I loved, creating a space that was mine, completely and entirely mine. One afternoon, as I unpacked the last box, I found the tiny plastic cake topper, the one from my birthday, the one that had started everything. I held it in my hand for a moment, remembering the hopes and dreams I had packed into that small, meaningless object. But as I looked at it now, it didn't hurt. It didn't make me sad. Instead, I placed it on a shelf above my desk, a small trophy of survival, proof that I hadn't let it break me, and that, in the end, was enough. So, what about you? Have you ever faced a moment where choosing yourself meant losing everything you thought you needed? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below. Your journey matters. If you found something in my story that resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one, because here we rise together. Stay strong, stay true, and remember your family doesn't define you. How you rise from it does.